there is no climate crisis. He says that with a period after each word. There is no climate crisis. Behind closed doors, Donald Trump has picked Chris Wright to be his Secretary of Energy. Now, the Secretary of Energy, in addition to overseeing, our nuclear bomb making, also oversees energy policy, fossil fuels, renewable energy, solar, wind, gas, natural gas, or methane, oil, coal, all that kind of stuff. And Donald Trump has picked a fellow who, shall we say, has a background in the fossil fuel industry. Fascinating story here. Chris Walker wrote this for Lever News, for David Sirota's website. David's been on this program a zillion times. And he's talking about, this was originally published in 2021, so it's kind of a backstory, actually, to what's going on here. And it starts out at the Colorado Oil and Gas Association's annual Energy Summit in 2021. And the banner proclaimed, "Climate Crisis." This was on Tuesday, August 24th at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. And there was a panel discussion that was kind of the capstone panel discussion, the main panel discussion. It was titled, "Combating Climate Change Together." Now, keep in mind, there were no politicians here. This was all oil and gas industry people. And the author notes, Colorado's oil and gas industry has grown into the nation's 7th largest energy market with over 100,000 employees and an estimated $19 billion a year impact on the state's economy. They've spent $82 million on state elections since 2016 and millions more on local lobbying. In fact, they were able to get the Democratic governor, Jared Polis, and Democratic legislators to water down a climate bill by removing cap and trade, even though Colorado was already behind on hitting its energy goals. So they have a lot of power, these people. So there's this thing called ESG, Environment, Social, and Governance, ESG efforts. And there was a panel discussion about this, and Chris Wright, who was then the CEO, and I believe still is, the CEO of Liberty Oilfield Services, right, a fracking company, one of Colorado's largest fracking operations. Chris Wright, the guy that Trump just nominated to be our energy secretary, gets up and says, we've been doing ESG for 20 years. I don't know of an industry with more people that care passionately about the communities they work in, which are usually poor rural communities. Well, that sounds good. He goes on, he says, our goal isn't to check a box or meet some goal that someone else says is really important. It's what we believe will drive the betterment of human lives, which also sounds good. And then he says, and let me divert on that for a minute. There is no climate crisis. He says that with a period after each word. There is no climate crisis. Now, this is a guy, by the way, who trolled North Face, the people who make the jackets, the fleece jackets, with a Denver billboard thanking them for making their products out of petroleum. The fleece is not, actual lamb's wool. It's polyester or whatever. It's made out of petroleum. So anyhow, Wright goes on. This is Trump's nominee for energy secretary. He says, and I quote, there has been no increase in extreme weather in the roughly 100 years of data sets we have. And the annual deaths globally from extreme weather events have dropped 95% over the last century, from an average of 500,000 a year to an average of 25,000 a year over the past decade. Now, just for the record, that's BS. This is the kind of stuff that's coming out of the climate denial industry that is funded by the fossil fuel industry. As they note over at Lever News, the latest IPCC report from a few weeks ago, which Wright chummily pointed out no one reads, makes unequivocal links between extreme weather and human-caused climate change. For example, climate scientists on the panel found that the types of historic heat waves, like the one recently experienced in the Pacific Northwest, are now 150 times more likely than they were in the past. The World Health Organization, meanwhile, now blames climate change for 150,000 annual deaths and that number is on the rise. So Chris Wright was just lying through his teeth. He goes on to say to the people in the room, the energy dialogue, getting divorced from reality, has massive, massive costs. One that hits close to home, 20% of children report having nightmares about climate change when they go to sleep. I speak in schools all the time. Children have way less interest in going to science or technical fields because what they see is science is thou shalt adopt the alarmist doctrine or you will be called a denier and shunned. So what was his solution? He said a third of humanity cook their daily meals using wood, dung, and agricultural waste inside their homes. Wouldn't it be better if they just used fossil fuels? Yeah. So in every regard, now Trump hasn't announced his labor pick, but last time around it was Scalia's son, Anthony, I believe his name is,